If you're in my personal life, you've heard me say on more than one occasion that sugar is the devil. I really believe this. But what's your hard and fast rule about sugar? Let me read this from a paragraph of my favorite book. That is not to say that sugar cannot be an occasional indulgence. Food has always played a major role in celebrations, like birthdays, weddings, graduations, Christmas, Thanksgiving, etc. The key word here is ... Well, what's a low-carb girl to do when we're talking about sugar and cake? Let's explore my hard and fast rule number 5. Set your boundaries and know your limits. Stick around. Hey there, welcome back to my show, 5 on Fridays. My name's Christine. I'm the blogger over at joyfulketolife.com, and I'm here today to talk to you about low-carb life and cake. How is that possible? Well, first of all, let's get back to where I read to you at the beginning of the video. Where did this quote come from? From none other than my favorite low-carb intermittent fasting doctor, Dr. Jason Fung, who on page 222 of his book, The Obesity Code, goes on to say, the key word here is occasional. Dessert is not to be taken every day. Okay, so how does that apply to my 5th hard and fast rule of setting boundaries and knowing your limits? It's a wee bit of an exception compared to what I talked about last week when I discussed no snacking and no cheating. I think when I say set your boundaries and know your limits, it's pretty self-explanatory. So today I just wanted to come to you with a story, and I want to leave you with a question because I need your help and I'd like to know what your opinion is on something that I have coming up in my life. Actually, I have 2 little stories. So let me start with the first one. The celebration is a wedding. The setting was a few months before I discovered keto and intermittent fasting, but a few months into my quitting sugar journey. By that time, I had already kicked to the curb sweet cravings, and I was no longer eating sugar or processed food. I found myself at a wedding, which was a wonderful time of celebration, but you will never guess where my table was. My table was right next to the donut table. Now, if you live in a climate that has fall season, you'll know that donuts are the big new thing in wedding celebrations. Here I am sitting at this table with hundreds and hundreds of donuts, close enough that that donut aroma was wafting underneath my nose all night long. So what's a girl to do who's quit sugar? Well, I completely ignored it. I'm happy to say that I didn't cave. I didn't have any of those donuts. But what I was focused on that evening was celebrating with my friends, dancing to 80s music, and that was where my mental focus was at. So I'm happy to say that was like my very first big non-scale victory when I was on the start of my quitting sugar journey. I went to a wedding and I didn't eat all the donuts. And let me tell you, in my past carb-addicted life, I probably would have easily eaten a half a dozen of those donuts throughout the night. So there's that. My second story that will help give you an idea of how I set my boundaries and know my limits. I started keto and intermittent fasting in January of 2017, and 2 months later, I was going to be turning 50. I was about ready to make my 50th year my best year yet because I was only 2 months into my keto and fasting journey, but I was starting to feel amazing and unstoppable. So it just so happens that my husband and I share a birthday on March 17th. Here's some shamrocks so you don't forget when my birthday is. Anyhow, my husband and I, we share a birthday, and I didn't want him not to celebrate. He wasn't eating keto or low carb at the time. So we went out to a restaurant. I went where I knew I would be able to get my all-time favorite dessert because I was planning on indulging. I grew up eating hot fudge cream puffs with Saunders hot fudge smothered over the top of them. And when I'm talking about hot fudge cream puffs, I'm talking about big cream puffs like this. They were really big. Most of the time I split one with a friend. Occasionally I would eat the whole thing if it was enough for a meal. So on this day, March 17th, 2 months into my keto journey, I sat down and I ordered the hot fudge cream puff. And when it showed up, it was like this big. It was like the tiniest serving of hot fudge cream puff I'd ever had in my 50 years of life. And I just had to laugh. And I did laugh out loud. And the waitress was like, oh, is everything okay? What's wrong? And I was like, no, everything's fine. This is perfect. It was a perfect size. And in my mind, I'm thinking that that was the biggest God wink ever. And it was his way of reminding me that I no longer needed to rely on sweet treats to satisfy my soul, that he had me on a new path of living, which wasn't going to include sweet treats like little itty bitty teeny hot fudge cream puffs. But I ate it anyhow, and it didn't make me sick, which is a good thing. But it did make me start to realize that that was something that I could have lived without. So at that time, I made a resolution with myself that I was no longer going to eat the old standard high carb, high sugar desserts. And what did I do instead? Well, let me tell you. If you need to have a dessert in your life and you are following a low carb or a keto journey, you can find a bazillion keto and low carb dessert recipes on Google. And if you're specifically looking for cake, I'm going to drop a link below to my favorite keto cake. It's a German chocolate cake with the main ingredient in the cake to help keep it moist being zucchini. So you have to check that out if you're looking for some cake. Those are two quick stories I have today to help you start thinking, if you haven't already, about your own personal boundaries and what kind of limits you have. I do have a lot of friends that need to be very cautious when it comes to going off the rails. If they eat a sweet dessert or some potato chips, it could start a vicious cycle of carb binging for a few days, a few weeks, and then they have to get back on the saddle. And then I do have friends, and myself included, who have chosen not to introduce anything into their lifestyle that is not keto or low carb friendly. But this leads me to the question I have for you guys today. My daughter is getting married in 100 days. And I just did the contract for the very expensive wedding cake. And my daughter happened to pick an espresso cream filling for her wedding cake. Now, let me tell you, I used to be all about the espresso flavor. And now I'm wondering, do you think I'm going to eat the cake, or am I not going to eat the cake? Let's decide. Go ahead and drop a comment below. Let me know what you think I should do, or if you can predict what I am going to do. And I'm looking forward to reading your comments, and let's just have some fun with this. So that wraps up my 5 hard and fast rules from my month-long series in the month of August. And it was in response to my video I posted in July called I Was Sick and Obese. And those 5 hard and fast rules for myself are what helped me realize that I no longer have to live sick and obese. And I really hope that they've helped you too. Really encourage you to set those rules for yourself. And grab my freebie below to help you determine what your weight loss goals are and your health goals are. Pick your inspiration, find your motivation, and find somebody to encourage you. I hope that I can be one of those people. Anyhow, before I leave today, I just have 2 things to say. 1, sugar is the devil, and 2, choose joy. Have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.